Have you ever come across something in a video game that made you go,
bullshit, 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 bullshit?
A lot of the time, these are caused by something that was unfair. Which makes sense as pretty much no games nowadays are going to be 100% fair across the board. And I wanted to discuss some of the most unfair things within the Pokemon games. So to help out, I'm joined by my friend Dobbs, where we'll be discussing some of the most unfair things that you can come across within the Pokemon franchise. Some of these things can be really annoying, and some are just straight up unfair to some of the Pokemon. Then, we also did a video over on Dobbs' channel, going over 10 things in Pokemon that are more or less completely impossible. But until then, here are 10 things in Pokemon that are more or less complete bullshit. Or in other words, 10 things that are pretty unfair. It's safe to say that not all Pokemon get special treatment. When it comes to Pokemon specific items, an obvious one would be both Charizard and Mewtwo getting 2 Megastones, whereas other Pokemon either got 1 or nothing. Seriously, is it really fair that Garchomp, an already amazing Pokemon, gets blessed with a Mega Evolution, whereas Flygon, who is inferior in almost every way, doesn't because they couldn't come up with a good enough design? In terms of signature items that aren't Megastones or Z-Crystals, a more unique answer would be the Lati's exclusive item, Soldew. This item gives a free 1.5 boost to both their special attack and special defense with no drawback, essentially making it a free choice specs and assault vest, but they can use whatever moves they want. Compare that to other signature items like Mewtwo's Berserk Gene. This item raises Mewtwo's attack stat, but also confuses him. Or the special orbs that the Creation Trio gets, which increases the power of moves that share their type by a bit, but not as much as the Soldew. In fact, this item was considered so unfair and so unbalanced that its effect was changed completely in Gen 7. It now acts the same as the orbs that the Creation Trio gets, making it a much more fair item, but before it was changed, it was arguably the most broken signature item there was.
Now, coming in at number 2 for, in my opinion, the most unfair battle in Pokemon history, we have the Fisherman. Yes, a Fisherman. Not a Fisherman with 6 Magikarp, but a Fisherman with a level 20 Alakazam and Dragonair. And when you learn the context, these two Pokemon go from, that's okay, to, oh my god, that's overpowered, why are those in the game, it's broken and unfair. And here's why. In Pokemon Stadium 1, in the Pika Cup, the players allowed to rent level 15 Pokemon, but there's a weird catch. For some odd reason, the trainers that you face are given a 5 level leeway, which just basically means they can bring a level 20 Pokemon, which is just unbalanced and like why? But nonetheless, this disadvantage is bearable until you meet the Fisherman. When you face the Fisherman, who is the last trainer in the Pika Cup for round 2, 9.5 out of 10 times he's gonna beat you, because nearly every time he brings a level 20 Alakazam or Dragonair, which both have moves that can 2 to 3 shot most Pokemon that you can rent. And keep in mind, in Gen 1, the special defense stat was based on the special stat, so both these Pokemon were extremely bulky. Even if you brought a Chansey, which was the bulkiest Pokemon in the game, it would get 2 to 3 shot by Alakazam's Sake because it was just so broken. And honestly, if the Fisherman decides to bring Alakazam, it's over, because there's like no chance of you winning. You have to get extremely lucky. So you would have to hope that he brings a Dragonair, and then hope to paralyze it, and then hope to win. Because winning this unfair Pokemon battle just comes down to luck. Extreme luck. There's a reason why the Pokemon Stadium 1 speedrun can go up to 48 hours. It's because of how unfair the Fisherman battle is. It can literally take up to 24 hours to beat the Fisherman. It's insane. So if you ever wondered what the most unfair battle in Pokemon history was, it's against a Fisherman. Yes, a Fisherman.
Let's take a look at some moves that put the opponent to sleep. We have both Sing and Grass Whistle, cause a sleep, however only 55% chance to hit. There's obviously Sleep Powder, cause a sleep, which has a much better 75% accuracy. Still not great, but considering how good putting the opponent to sleep is, makes sense. Lovely Kiss also has a 75% accuracy, except can hit grass types post Gen 6. Hypnosis is only slightly more accurate than Sing with 60%. Dark Void before it got nerfed in Gen 7 was ridiculously busted, but now is only 50% accurate and Smeargle can't use it. So what do all these sleeping moves have in common? Their accuracy is pretty bad, some better than others, but still not great. Then you have Spore, cause a sleep and is 100% accurate. If that is not considered an unfair move, then I don't know what is. Sure, it doesn't affect grass types or Pokemon with Overcoat or safety goggles, but neither does Sleep Powder. The other notable 100% accurate sleep-inducing moves would be Yawn, but the sleep doesn't kick in until after a full turn. The only plus side to all of this is that not many Pokemon get access to Spore, but looking at the move itself compared to the other sleep-inducing moves, it's one of the best examples of a move that does something specific and is leagues better than the other moves that do the same thing, and in my opinion is still one of the most broken, unfair moves in the game.
Next up, we have Pokemon that were cheated out of typings, because some of these Pokemon are 100% deserving of a certain typing that they didn't get. For instance, probably the most infamous example is Charizard, the Pokemon that is based on a dragon that's not a dragon. Like, I wonder how Charizard felt when a plant got a dragon typing 20 years later. This tree is a dragon, this dragon is not a dragon. Like, Charizard has to carry a purse around with a pearl in it to become a dragon type. That must be humiliating. Another notable example is Lugia being the Guardian of the Sea, but the Guardian of the Sea is not a water type. It's a flying type. It flies. I feel like Game Freak should just go all out and give 3 typings to certain Pokemon and just like boost their stats a little bit to balance the change. Because there's Pokemon like Rotom with his forms, Celebi with the fairy typing, Gyarados with the dragon typing, or even Bidoof by giving it a second normal typing, making it weak to fighting 4 times, which would just be a funny meme. Another Pokemon that's less notable would be Golduck not getting the Psychic type, which when I found out that it was only a pure water type, I was just shocked. But I have a feeling it didn't get the Psychic typing because the Psychic type was just completely broken in Generation 1. So maybe Game Freak didn't want a duck having the power of a legendary god. A god duck. That would honestly be freaking awesome.
Here are some things in Pokemon that were changed a generation later because they were either unfair compared to some of the other things in the game, or they just needed a bit of balancing. Do you guys remember in Generation 5 when Chandelure had Shadow Tag as an ability? That seemed pretty busted, and was taken away in Gen 6. Another ghost type that had its ability changed was Gengar. For the longest time, everyone knew that they couldn't Earthquake a Gengar, with it having Levitate, losing its ground type weakness. But in Gen 7, Levitate was replaced with Cursed Body, probably more fitting as well, since Gengar is clearly standing on 2 legs. But an obvious nerf. Gale Wing's Talonflame was a notorious threat in the metagame, giving priority to any flying type move, making Brave Bird from a Gale Wing's Talonflame the strongest priority move in the game. However, Gale Wings was changed in Gen 7, so that flying type moves would only have priority if the user was at full health, but also made Talonflame a lot less used, which you could say is pretty unfair on the Gen 6 bird. Parental Bond, definitely one of the most broken things added to Gen 6. So good that Mega Kangaskhan was put in the Ubers tier by Smogon. In Gen 7 however, the second hit of Parental Bond was nerfed, dealing less damage, which was pretty deserving, making the ability a bit fairer. And last but not least, Mimikyu's Disguise ability, starting the game off with a free substitute. It was amazing. Did it deserve a nerf, where Mimikyu now loses an eighth of its health if it loses its disguise? Maybe, but either way, some would argue that these ability adjustments are much fairer now.
Now, one of the most unfair challenges in any Pokemon game lies in the Mystery Dungeon games, more specifically in the Red and Blue Rescue Team games. And near the end of the storyline, after completing an optional mission, the player gains access to a dungeon known as the Wish Cave. And let me tell you, the player is going to wish that they didn't go in this cave because it is completely unfair. And here's how. In the Wish Cave, the player is not only reverted back to level 1, but the player has to go through 99 floors of gradually stronger Pokemon, starting from level 1 to level 99. So basically, it's like starting a completely new game while being stuck in a dungeon with terrifying Pokemon that want to kill you. But it gets worse. If you thought that was hard, well, there's a dungeon in the same game that's even tougher and more unfair. Enter the Purity Forest, the same kind of dungeon, but on top of the previous rules, you have to do it alone, without your partner. Oh, and also they revert your IQ to initial skills, so it's even harder because you're nerfed. Yeah, it's pretty insane, but the rewards are definitely worth it because you can get a Jirachi and a Celebi out of it if you manage to do all 99 floors. But it still doesn't beat the fact that it's completely unfair and very unbalanced, but also satisfying when you finally complete it.
Next, let's talk about max raids. Despite being one of the better features added to Sword and Shield, they unfortunately punish people who don't raid with others. There is almost no point in attempting a 5-star max raid by yourself, and in some cases, without more than 2 people. For one, the NPCs that you get partnered with are really dumb, especially ones that have Eevee, Solrock, Clefairy, and Wobbuffet. Hell, the NPC that has Magikarp is more helpful than these guys. Eevee just spams Helping Hand, which can be helpful in some situations, but not at all when the raid Pokemon has shields up. The Solrock just uses Cosmic Power, which is pretty much a complete waste when the raid Pokemon can reset the team's stats. Clefairy just spams Follow Me and dies, and good luck trying to get Wobbuffet to hit the raid Pokemon consistently. On top of that, if you're lucky enough to even find a Gigantamax Pokemon, chances of catching it without a Master Ball are still pretty damn low, especially if you're not the host of the raid. Max Rays were a great idea, and an awesome way to get people to play with each other. I just wish that Game Freak would balance them out a bit more.
Now for number 8, something we found very unfair was the timer system back in Generation 6 and the gens before that. Because back in those days, instead of having your own clock like in a game of chess, you shared an overall clock with your opponent with a turn timer of 99 seconds. And if you're asking me, in any kind of competitive game, you do not want to share anything with your opponent because they will find a way to abuse it and win. And in this case, with Pokemon, they're gonna abuse the time by stalling out the time and just win the game with a stalling Pokemon team. That was a legitimate strategy in Gen 6 and below. It was just the stall fest and making your opponent all salty. It was the salt rage fest. It was the best kind of experience in Pokemon ever. Not really. Even at VGC tournaments, this was a legitimate strategy to win the whole World Championship, because in that setting, the overall clock was at 15 minutes, so it was even worse. You could literally just stall at each turn because you have more Pokemon and just win the whole thing by not fighting in a Pokemon battle. You could have won by choosing not to battle when you're ahead. It just made no sense. But thankfully, after 6 whole generations, we finally got our personal timer so that the opponent can't just stall out our time and be scummy. So thank God that Game Freak caught on, because that old strategy was just straight up unfair.
This section is dedicated to Pokemon getting left out. Is it fair that Charizard is the only Kanto starter to get consistent special treatment all the time? He gets into Smash, and was even his own character at one point. He gets into Pokken, although Blastoise did eventually get into Pokken, but Charizard was always in the game. He gets not 1, but 2 Mega Evolutions. He gets his own Gigantamax form. He doesn't have to wait to be available in Sword and Shield straight away. He's the start of the Origin special, and a lot of the anime itself. Is it really fair that Charizard gets all the special treatment, whereas Venusaur and Blastoise get put on the side constantly? Next, let's focus on left out shinies. Let's say your favourite shiny Pokemon is Zygarde. Would you want to hunt for this awesome shiny? Well, if you do, too bad, you can't. There's still a large number of Pokemon whose shiny forms are completely cut off, and you can't get normally. Of course there was an event to give away a shiny Zygarde, but what fun is that, when you can't actually get one yourself? Plus, if you missed out on the event, and you don't know someone who has one for trade, then you're definitely not getting one. But do you know what's even more unfair than that? Johto Pokemon missing out on the Johto region because they're only available in Kanto. Yeah, that was a good idea, wasn't it? Say you're playing a Generation 2 game. Do you want a Houndour on your team as your fire type? Yeah, f*** you. Wait until you're in a completely different region if you want to use one. Sure, this might not be as unfair as being completely removed from the game, but you should at least be available in your home region. There are plenty of other instances where Pokemon have been unfairly cut from something, but these I think are some of the most notable ones.
We have very unfair movesets that some Pokemon get, whereas more deserving Pokemon don't get. I'm looking at you, Wooper, with the no arms. For example, Incineroar and Scrafty don't learn Sucker Punch, whereas for some reason, Diglett, Ghastly, Spinarak, Rowlet, and Wormadam do. And the reason why this is unfair is because Incineroar is based on a wrestler. Incineroar is specifically based on a mean wrestler, a wrestler known as Heel, which in the wrestling lore is a bad guy. And as a bad guy, you would expect Incineroar to play dirty, and Sucker Punch is definitely a dirty type of move. With Scrafty, it's the Hoodlum Pokemon, and with Sucker Punch, it just makes perfect sense for this gangsta. Another good example is Alex's favorite Pokemon, Infernape, not getting Drain Punch, but for some reason, Shroomish does. Even Infernape's hidden ability is Iron Fist, which boosts the power of punching moves, so it just makes no sense and it's not fair to Infernape. Also, Pokemon like Scyther, Yamega, and Gliscor can't learn Fly, whereas Volbeat can. But in Volbeat's Dex entry, it states that it can't fly, and in Yamega's Dex entry, it states that it can fly. So it just makes no sense, and it's just completely unfair to all the flying mons that should be able to fly. I mean, even Golurk can, and he's like a humongous giant Iron Man.
So, are these 10 of the most unfair things in Pokemon? Well, if there are others that we didn't mention, I guess you can say it was pretty unfair of us to not include them. If you want to see some more content with Dobbs, please check out the video on his channel where we go over 10 impossible things in Pokemon. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, subscribe for more videos in the future, and until next time, thank you so much for watching.